Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going over a step-by-step process on how to engrave tumblers on this xTool S1. Now a good chunk of this video isn't specific to this S1. The xTool Create software, when we set everything up, that's going to kind of transfer to other machines. But I haven't seen a lot of info on this S1 using that rotary, so we're going to dive into that. Now with this S1 machine, because you have such a big module here, I got the 40-watt module and it's pretty robust. And the speeds you can do are pretty fast. So when it gets going, when it's going back and forth, this whole machine can, when you have the tray in there, that tray can shift a little bit. So it can kind of move back and forth. So what I did is I created this jig. Now it's not a fancy jig. We'll look at that in a second. But it really kind of locks itself in place compared to like putting it on the tray or something else. Because originally when I got this S1, I had it on this folding table. And when it would get going, it would actually start shifting back and forth the whole table. So now it's on a solid workbench. It's nice and stiff. So let's take a look at that jig and see my setup for this S1. All right, so here's my jig setup, which is basically a 3/4 inch piece of plywood that I kind of cut to fit, and I have it on the bottom slide here. Now these slide grooves are just under 3/4 inch, as I found out. So usually I believe plywood is actually not a full 3/4 inch, it's actually a tiny bit smaller. So I kind of just sanded down the sides and it slid in pretty nice. And this way it's super secure in there. It's kind of wedged into place so that board isn't going anywhere. Now what I did for the actual rotary itself is I had to cut out, well, first of all, I had to cut out a shape in the 3/4 inch plywood. I tried to just put it on top originally, but then the whole tumbler and the rotary was too high. So I cut the whole thing out, and then I glued a piece of 1/4 inch plywood to the bottom of this 3/4 inch, if that makes sense. So it kind of rests inside there, the rotary does. I also put a piece of 1/4 inch plywood at the end here. And then I have the rotary screwed in. Now why I did that is I have a little play now where this can lift up and down. And I 3D printed some different, so this is 1mm, 2mm. You can use different thicknesses of whatever material. Now this way I can kind of slide in the back depending on how I want to raise and lower this thing. And why I do that is some of these tumblers will have like angles to them. So when you're setting up in the rotary, it might not be, you got your little level here, kind of leveling it out. This way you can kind of go up or down with it and kind of get it nice and level for when you're doing your engraving. So one other thing to mention, I believe this is a Ra2 Rotary, I think that's what it's called. And to plug it in, you're gonna be in the front right of this S1. So, I mean, you could spend forever trying to look for that port, but it's kind of hidden. It's got this little protective cable, if you can see that. Hopefully you can kind of see that there. So yeah, just plug it in and real simple. So before we actually load up our tumbler into that rotary, I like to get the measurements of it first. Now the rotary comes with this handy kind of measuring device. Now I like to go in millimeters. That might be kind of controversial depending on where you live. To me, all this stuff, it's easier to do in millimeters. It's so much easier to tweak, like if you got to go 1 millimeter more or less compared to say 1/32 or whatever, you know. So I'm going with millimeters. You can go with whatever. I'll show you in the software where you can change it from millimeters to inches to make it more convenient. But usually I just kind of take the measurements and I actually write them down just so I don't forget them. So I'm just gonna I think you can do the diameter or the perimeter of this cup. So this perimeter or circumference, I think they're the same, but I think in the software it calls perimeter. So this tumbler looks like exactly 280 millimeters. So I'm writing that down. So 280 millimeters around. Now, my plan for this is I'm just gonna engrave on one side. So you don't have to be as specific, but so when you're laying it out in the software, you're gonna kind of picture this as like if you're peeling off a label. So your label is gonna be 280 millimeters long. Now you can also, with this measurer here, kind of see what area you want to engrave in. So for me, it's probably about 60 millimeters. So I'm going to write 60 as well. So if I want to do stuff all the way around, that's kind of where it starts slanting down. Now you could do more than that, but that's kind of going to be my rectangle. It's 280 by 60 millimeters. Now that would be the max all the way around where I can engrave. So I could load that up in the software. Now I'm just going to do half of a side. So what I like to do is kind of use this measurement or use this measuring tape again and kind of see what looks good, where you're going to be able to see what I'm going to put on there. And I think I'd be good with probably like 90 millimeters of surface area. So I guess that's, for this tumbler, that's what I'm going to focus on, is just that kind of area where you can see pretty clearly. So I'm going to kind of write that measurement down as well. So now now that we have the measurements, I guess, we're going to jump over to the software side of things, and we're going to load the measurements in. We're going to get a graphic, and we're going to be able to do some engraving. All right, we're now in the xTool Creative Space software. Now the first thing I'll show you is that millimeters, inches thing. So top left here, just click on that. So units, millimeters, inches. So you can kind of choose what you want there, but I will start with millimeters. Now we'll head over to get our settings here. So laser flat, we're going to want to go laser the cylinder here. Also make sure I'm using the chuck. So make sure you switch over to the chuck there as well. That's very important. It'll screw it up if it doesn't. So we already have this perimeter here, and that was 280. And so it automatically plugs in diameter there. And once we get it set up, we'll do the distance and the measuring and everything. But now we can kind of start our design here. So first thing I might do is I'm just going to kind of make a rectangle here with what we want it to be. So 280 was the full way around. I didn't want that. So kind of the 90 millimeter by 60 millimeter is what I decided on. And so we'll kind of plug in that here. We want to unlock so we can adjust and that's actually, I want it the other way. So we can just flip it 90 degrees. All right, so that is kind of the box we want everything to fit in. So this crosshair or whatever here, that is where the laser is set up for the rotary. So I kind of have it at the bottom of the working surface. So we can kind of center that up a little bit. And this we can move a little bit later too. So this isn't super crucial. Now if you want to zoom in, you just hold Control and scroll with your wheel on your mouse. So you can kind of zoom in on that. And what we want to do right away is this box, so we don't get ourselves screwed up, is we want to ignore it. We don't want to have that cut or anything. So it's just kind of just for reference there. And so now we can start designing our image here. So I'm going to scroll a little bit. So I'm making this tumbler for my wife. She wants "Don't panic, it's organic," I think she said. So we'll make that for her. Why not, huh? So I'll do the don't panic first. Let's do this for font. I already got the first one. So I'm going to do another one separately for it's organic. All right, and we'll do that same font, the combo font. And right away, I'm going to go to engrave. Now, I already know the power settings for this 40 watt. I like to do 100, and let's do a full 500 for speed. We can really go fast with the 40 watt laser. Let's do the same thing just so we don't forget. 500. Oops, that's score. We want to engrave. 100% power, 500. All right. So maybe we'll make that a little smaller, and we can add some fruit or something. So this is kind of fun where you can do, I think it says shapes. Yeah. So you can get all kinds of shapes here. And plant probably has some. I think there's a lemon I was looking at before. There we go. Let's add one of those. And we're also going to set this up to engrave, do that 100% at 500. And we'll kind of scale, oops, scale that down. And what I like to do is say you want a couple of these, so you copy, obviously copy and paste. Everyone kind of knows, but see how they're both going at the same angle. You can go to reflect, flip horizontally, and then you can, then it's going on at the other one. All right, so we're gonna just kind of tweak this image here. So these look maybe a little big. You know what, I'm gonna delete that because it's easier to get one how you like it than copy it. So it kind of fits the size. And the software does a nice job of kind of knowing where you should be putting things. I guess it kind of locks. As you can see, it centers itself kind of like that. And also, if you find it still doesn't look quite center, you can just use your arrow keys. So I'm just using the arrow keys, and if you want, you can really precisely move it that way. So we're just still kind of fine tuning it. I like that over a little bit using the arrow key. All right, now I will copy this, paste, flip horizontally, there we go. And then a lot of this is just kind of just eyeball it too. See, yeah, so that's looking pretty good. Now maybe that's going to need to be a little smaller here, a little closer up. All right, now that we have kind of, I would say we're pretty good here. I'm going to group this all together. So when you group it, so now everything's the same, or everything's all in one. So when you go to resize it, everything resizes. And so I'll kind of drag this down here. We'll control and scroll back out. So yeah, I'm just holding down that control when I'm doing that. Holding control and then with that mouse wheel. Now, so here's our box. Here's the kind of the top. Picture this tumbler on its side, I guess. So the whole tumbler would be like this. So this is kind of would be the top of the tumbler, but it's laying on its side in the rotary. And so we want to flip this all around. So it should go to 90 degrees. Usually it pops. All right, and let's see how that's going to fit in there. So yeah, that's gonna fit pretty well in there. All right, so oops, I'm kind of screwing up here. All right, so we kind of so it's on its side now. So we got our lemons. Don't panic. It's organic. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good. We have all our settings good to go. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. I think we'll kind of get the tumbler loaded up in the machine and we can get ready to engrave this. All right, we're going to get our tumbler loaded up here. So we're just going to clamp it in the chuck here. Get that nice and tight. And now this tumbler it doesn't have any lettering. A lot of these tumblers might say Yeti, you know, depending on the brand, Yeti or whatever. So you might want to either put that on the back side, just so like if you put your engraving and then the Yeti is off, it kind of looks weird. But this is nice. It doesn't have any of that to mess with. So we got our little leveler here. So that is not level. So that's where I got all these little pieces to adjust in the back, so we'll just kind of start adding those. And each tumbler is going to be a little different with what you want for level. Getting close to there so I can actually add a full. 1/4 inch piece here. That's going to be almost perfect. Yeah. All right. So we got it level. Kind of want to make sure you kind of circle around because this can be a little out of whack there. But yes, so we're kind of all set up there. And now we're going to bring this laser head to the top so you can hopefully see, maybe you can't, maybe I'll zoom in there. Hopefully you can see that laser beam. So this isn't as crucial because if you want it like perfectly aligned with something, I don't know, since there's no markings on this already, that it's pretty forgiving. So we're basically kind of just deciding how far down we want that engraving to be. So we'll kind of line up that laser there, and it's looking pretty good. So I think we can frame it up and go from there. All right, so we're going to want to set the distance here. So let's all right, and kind of taking that measurement now. All right, so we're all set up on that front. All right, now we're going to do the framing here. Hit the framing button. The frame function is ready. So, and then we just hit the button on the front of the machine there. All right, really the last thing to do is just set the lid. We got the ventilation system on. I think everything's ready to go, and we will head on over and we can, we should be ready to go here. All right, just hit the front button and start to engrave. So it turned out terrific. It might be a little hard to see on the camera how it did turn out, but the engraving nice and crisp. Really pleased with the results. Now this xTool S1 with that riser base and the rotary setup, it does a great job. This to me is kind of the perfect setup for the rotary. It's kind of my standalone. I just kind of keep this set up almost all the time. What's nice about even that jig is once that rotary comes off, you can keep that plywood in there. Just slide that tray back in, and then you can do a bunch of regular cuts as well. So if you do have any questions on this video at all, please leave them in that comment section below. Also, if you're interested in purchasing your own xTool S1 or any laser cutter from xTool, I will provide my affiliate link. You save some money by using that link. I have a coupon code, and it helps you out, it helps me out. I really appreciate when people use those links. So as always, I'm Chad from Chad DIY, and we'll see you on the next one.